Hi guys, welcome back. So in today's video, I'm going to talk to you guys about my whole experience traveling to an amber country during COVID times. So I went to Mykonos. It was such an amazing trip. If you guys haven't been, I really do recommend going. It's really cool. Really amazing place. Sunsets are just beyond beautiful. Frank and I actually booked this, I would say almost 2 years ago, and it just kept getting delayed and delayed. Of course, because of COVID, more and more to move flights constantly. So it was just an absolute nightmare, but we finally managed to go. And even though we weren't planning to go to any amber country because we didn't know, there's just so much uncertainty surrounded around it. So I wanted to speak to you guys about what I did. So before we even left, I had to take a rapid test. This depends on the country, so you do need to look on the government's website because they have all sorts of different entry requirements which you need to meet. And for Greece, it was a rapid test or an antigen test. I actually got that done at Boots. I was looking around at different places, and for me, I normally go for the place which I trust the most. Booked it a few days before because we were just looking and waiting to see if it was going to go on green, to whether to book it. So this is why it's just such a big risk going to amber countries, because you don't know, things can change in literally a matter of hours and days. Frank was lucky enough to not have to take any kind of tests for going over there because he has been double jabbed. I've had my first jab, but I haven't had my second one yet, so I did still have to do the rapid test. You went into Boots, they did up the nose like the usual, in the throat too, all very uncomfortable, and it felt so awkward. I was just sitting there in the chair like this, and he was just sticking things up my nose, so that was fun. I literally got my test result in a matter of half an hour. He said up to an hour, but I got it back in half an hour. And you just receive a message, and my gosh, when you're opening this message, the anxiety that I was feeling, I was like, oh my gosh, please don't be positive, because we booked this holiday, and I thought, my gosh, we're gonna lose everything if I am positive. But thankfully, all clear, obviously. The night before you left, we filled out a passenger locator form, which is also on the government website, which is your details, where you're going, time you depart. Is quite a thorough thing. We also paid for our day 2 and day 8. When we were on holiday, it arrived. One thing that I would say to you is make sure you print out all of your documentation just so you have it, because if your phone dies, you're not going to have it, and it's just going to be a massive stress ball of things. We just printed out everything that we had, everything that we probably didn't even need, just in case. Like, that's the most important thing. You just do everything just in case you do need it. That was actually really handy to have because we had everything in place, like labeled, and so when they asked for it, we knew where it was and we could just hand it to them and just kind of make things a little bit easier for ourselves and for the people at the airport. We went to Heathrow. We caught an early flight. We were up at 3:30, and I'm not even going to tell you, the Uber, my gosh, I did it through Uber Reserves, and I've never done it before. I haven't really booked any taxis, which is really funny to say. We haven't booked any taxis because we've been COVID and haven't needed to go anywhere. It was like the morning, and it was like 10 minutes before we really needed to leave, and I didn't know if the Uber was working or not. I was really stressing out because I was like, where else do I book it from? It's 3:30 in the morning. Who else is going to be up at this time? So that is also good though. Uber was really good. They did end up coming, and we caught a British Airways. When we got there, they said that we didn't actually include luggage. Thank you, Frank, so much. He forgot to add on the baggage, so that was a surprise to the long list of things that we needed to do and the things that could have gone wrong that day. That had to be one of them. I'm gonna put a little video, because I filmed a few guys, of what the airport at Heathrow was like. I actually thought it was gonna be very busy, so did Frank, because some of Frank's friends had gone away and they were saying how busy it was and how long they had to wait in the queues. So we kind of went in there not knowing what to expect. And when I got in there, I was like, hello? Where is everybody? I was also worrying because Heathrow is such a big airport. I've been once before and I actually got lost and I was almost missed my flight, but everything actually went smoothly. We got there in plenty of time, so we just hung around by the board. They were having some technical difficulties with the computers, but that got sorted out pretty quickly, and there was only, I would say, about 30 people in the queue. Normally there's queues and queues of people because everyone's trying to get their baggage in so they can just sit down and relax and wait for their flight. But there was hardly anyone there, which was actually quite nice because I was expecting it to be completely rammed. But then I thought, oh, it's going to be an amber country. You don't really know what to expect, so you just kind of go along with things. They just asked for the information that we needed, my test results. They checked it through, which did take a little bit longer. When we got onto the plane, we said their usual announcements, you guys can imagine, where the exits are and things like that. But then they did say we obviously had to wear our masks throughout the whole airport when we got onto the plane, and they did let us know and make us aware that you're only allowed to briefly take your mask off if you're drinking or eating, and as soon as you finish doing that, you put it back on. And if you do basically mess around and you don't put it on and don't respect the rules, then they will have to hand you into the authorities, which I completely understand. You're on the airplane, you're not excluded from the rules, and because it is a closed environment, I think it's even more important to keep your mask on. That was completely expected. The staff on board were also wearing masks. And so to do with seating, Frank and I specifically bought seats because I'm one of those people that like to look outside the window, because I just love that when you're up that high, trees look like broccoli. And yeah, when I do go on a flight, I like to book that seat. We were really lucky because there weren't a lot of people on the British Airways flight. We were able to have a space between us. So it was just Frank and I with a whole row to ourselves. We weren't sure about how it was all going to work, but because there weren't a lot of us on the plane, we were looking around and seeing how everyone else's seats were working out, and there always seemed to be one spare. We were thinking, oh, this would be nice, like we get a whole row to ourselves. How lovely would that be? Rather than being crunched up with someone else who you don't really know and you're just sitting right next to them, and it feels a little bit awkward because you don't know who they are. But I will get back to a point on the flight back. So when we arrived in Mykonos, it did take forever to get out of the airport. Because there was like this corner, we couldn't really see what was going on. We just had this massive queue in front of us, which literally was not moving. And it was like an hour and a half before we could actually see the end of the queue and like what was going on. And we did kind of have our suspicion, like, what's going on? Are they checking things over again? Are they doing more tests? And they were doing another COVID test. Everyone had to get a test. I do believe these were the rapid tests. So when you get there, you obviously show your passport and you have to show your other forms to get into the country. They had like this little cubicle thing, all of their equipment on one side, just as you go through security. 2 seats with like curtains between them, and you just basically get told to sit down and they do up your nose. Again, after that, you do get told to wait in the waiting room for 20 minutes. And if you do get a message, then you are positive. Frank and I collected our bags and we waited in the waiting room for 20 minutes. We were like so anxious looking at our phone thinking, my gosh, why don't they just send us messages regardless so we know we're going to get a message if it was positive or negative, which I didn't understand. But anyway, I was more worried because I knew that I had a very low chance of getting it because I had a test the day before and it was negative. But I was more worried about Frank because even though he has had the vaccine, you can still get COVID, and he hadn't had the test, so we didn't know if he was a carrier or not. We just didn't know, so I just felt like he was more at risk. We actually received a message saying negative, so I was a bit confused about that. I didn't quite understand that because I've only just been tested, then I had to be retested even though I have shown a negative test. So that is, for me, quite questionable, but you do what you got to do to get into the country and you respect their rules. But yeah, everything was fine to go. So we got picked up to go into the hotel. We had to wear masks. We had to wear masks throughout the hotel as well. When we were there, we also had to do the test, which is 72 hours before departure. So we were only in Mykonos for 5 days. We had to take a test before, we had to take a test to get into the country, then we had to book a test while we were in Mykonos a few days before we come back, and then we also had to get the day 2 and day 8 tests as well. Because it's a foreign country, we didn't know how everything was going to work, where to go to have everything done, and so that was a little bit of a stress too, but luckily we were at a hotel so we could ask reception. They gave us instructions on what to do and how to go to the doctors and get all of that sorted, so that's what we did. Frank and I went to the doctors. There were actually a few people outside waiting to get their tests too. That didn't take too long actually. We just went in, do up the nose and in the throat, then we had to wait 2 days for our results. We waited 2 days for our results and we still didn't have anything, so we were calling up the doctor saying, you know, what's going on? We haven't received our test, we're leaving tomorrow. We were thinking, oh, what do we do if we do get positive? What happens? And then apparently you stay in a government hotel and they pay for you if you do have COVID, which is another massive cost to the government. So the doctors said, don't worry, we will have your test, it will be negative. And I just thought, you were very sure that it's going to be negative. How do you know it's going to be negative? So another day passed and we were still waiting for our test. We still hadn't received it. So we were literally going to reception. We waited there for an hour and a half trying to get hold of the doctors. This is out of our very short holiday. So it was really frustrating for us having to wait around for the doctor constantly. We were told a time where we were going to have results. It wasn't given to us. Then it was literally the day that we were going and we still hadn't received it. This was like getting up to hours before we had to leave and we still didn't have our results back. It actually got to an hour before we were going to go. So we were calling the doctor like, we're going to go in an hour and we need these tests. So I finally got mine back, but then Frank didn't. So we were like, where's Frank's? It was getting like half an hour. You can imagine our stress levels at this point. We were promised our test 2 days after, so one day before we actually go, and it was literally getting a half an hour before we were supposed to leave to catch our plane. So yeah, literally 15 minutes before we were going to leave, we finally received this test. So it was pretty havoc, and we were thinking, do we actually catch this plane or like go to the airport, like leave the hotel if we haven't even received our test results yet? That was not fun. All clear on that, thankfully. So on our way back home, it was a whole different story. I'm gonna put another video for you guys here. Okay, this was a whole different story. Please keep your distance. Huh. What distance? We're still waiting. Hour and a half in?
Yeah, about an hour. About an hour.
Got some time to go. It was so packed. Oh my gosh. I was not expecting it. To be honest, from our hotel, we could see the planes taking off and it was like pretty frequent, those planes coming and going. So I thought, it's a small island, it's a very small airport. Heathrow is a lot larger, so it can handle a larger capacity of people, but Mykonos cannot because it's a small airport. So many coaches were pulling up to the airport when we were arriving and I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is gonna be something to get home. But to be honest, we had such a smooth run there. I was expecting something to happen on the way back. It was a lot of waiting time. We had to wait about an hour and a half to almost 2 hours just to get into baggage. We actually got to the airport with 3 hours to spare, and thankfully we did because the queues were horrendous. People had actually got there later than us and their planes were sooner, so we were worrying for them, thinking, my gosh, how are you gonna get your baggage on in time? And then you've also got to go through security. So everyone was like panicking, we're gonna miss our flights, like what's going on? There was hardly any people doing the baggage and there was massive amounts of people. So you can imagine, or you can see, the amount of backlog of people trying to get their baggage on. Also, you could see on the floor it says, please spread out. And I was like, look around, like where or how are we supposed to spread out in this chaos? So that was a completely different experience to the UK from Heathrow. The flight that we caught back was EasyJet. We went to the EasyJet like location. Baggage went on finally. I like was dying for the loo, so I was like running to the loo. It's like a 4 and a bit hour flight. And we were like, oh, we haven't eaten anything in ages. Oh, I really need a coffee. You know, all that stuff. You know, you want to get comfortable and have your snacks in your corner and your drink and feel comfortable on the plane, you know? So that's what we wanted to do. And so we were going to check out, like, how much time do we have before we need to start? And she was like, literally 10. So I was like, Frank, you go to here. And I was like, I'll go here. I'll get the coffees. You get the sandwiches. So we were like this, running and... God, I'm actually sweating myself out just talking to you guys about it. Oh my gosh. We literally had minutes to spare to get through security, which was literally one person. No queues at all because everyone had, you know, gone on well in advance and we just hanging around getting our sandwiches and our coffees, you know, as you do. So we just had our face masks. My gosh, I can't even tell you how many spots I had gotten on holiday from wearing masks. By the time I got off the plane, we got there 3 hours in advance. The flight was 4 hours, so that's 7 hours of wearing this mask and hardly ever taking it off for a quick bite. Literally, my mask was dripping. That's how hot it was and stuffy. That was probably the worst part of everything. We flew with British Airways because we were actually supposed to go to Santorini beforehand, but our flight got cancelled, so we had to change the EasyJet flight because that also had to be moved and times changed. They changed the time last minute. So we just booked 2 different flights from 2 different airports because it just worked out easy that way. We're just like, I've had enough of this. Just book the damn thing and let's just go. Throughout the holiday though, we were looking at our flights, making sure it hadn't get cancelled, because actually while we were in the queue in Mykonos, we actually overheard a man saying that his flight home got cancelled. So he'd already done 2 weeks in Mykonos, and so he had to spend another 11 days in Mykonos, all on his cost. So I thought, my gosh, that is a long time. But yes, so that was one risk that you do take going to an amber country, is getting things moved and cancelled and just being the potential of being stuck in a country. That was my main worry, but luckily that didn't happen with us. We managed to get there and back okay, and now we're home. I have taken my day 2 test from Screen 4, so as soon as I rode through the door, they were all in my post box, which was really nice. I was like, oh, I don't have that to worry about now because it's all there. 2 days afterwards we took it. It was literally exactly the same. Up the nose, in the throat, put it into your little twisty bottle and put it in the package, and then you put in the priority post box from Royal Mail. And about 2 or 3 days afterwards, I got the message saying, we have received your test. It's going to take a day or 2 to process it and we'll let you know the results by email. So I did actually get my results 2 days afterwards. So I'm currently isolating for 10 days and now we're just waiting to take our day 8. And then once isolation is over, we can just get back to our normal lives. The test that you do need to take, it does add up to be quite a bit. I think I spent about £250 extra on tests alone. So that's something that you do need to take into consideration if you do want to go to an amber country. But apart from that, I would also say if you're going away for a short amount of time, like Frank and I only went for 5 days, it's not very long, worrying about booking the doctors and getting that all sorted out and going to have the tests, all of the hassle that we had afterwards. It did take time out of our short holiday, and I just thought, if I am going away for such a short amount of time again, I've been there, I've done it now, so I know what to expect, but I don't know necessarily if it was completely worth it going through all of that hassle for such a short amount of holiday. Like if we were going for maybe a week or 10 days, then you have more time, so I don't think it would bother me as much, like taking that time out of the day to go and sort that out because you have a number of other days to look forward to, kind of thing. Oh, before I end this video, I've got to tell you guys, for EasyJet, we did ask about the seating. They did say, no, that is not the rules. It's not social distance. Like, if you're fully booked, the plane's fully booked, you will have someone sit next to them. And they said that they had so much trouble from passengers, you know, giving them so much grief because they got on the plane thinking that they were going to be social distance. And I think it may have been like that before, but because things have changed and companies have lost so much money that I don't feel like they can afford to keep social distancing out and losing money from those seats. I just don't think it would be affordable for them. So I do completely understand that. And to be honest, before I got on the plane, I didn't even think about the extra seat and the space. I normally sit by the window seat, so it's normally Frank that has to deal with a stranger next to him. You have your mask and you do know, you need to be aware that you're going to be in a close environment. That's just something else to consider too. If you're not feeling comfortable, like, that's completely okay, but you need to take that into consideration that you can have a stranger sit next to you. So we overall had a nice holiday. It was so nice to get away, but I'll make a whole new video for you guys about my whole Mykonos experience, because otherwise this is going to be like a 10-hour video for you guys. So I thought I'll split it in for 2. So I hope this video was helpful to you guys. This is completely my experience going into amber country. If you're going to a different country or if you're going later than me, things change all the time, so it may be slightly different for you. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys soon.